Hello and welcome to another exciting video. My name is Manny, and in today's video I'm going to talk to you about 10 interesting facts about nursing here in the US. And before we start, let me just say that Crocs aren't allowed here in the US, just like in the UK. I bet the regulators didn't see this coming. And now that this is out of the way, let's go to fact number 1. Now, employment for registered nurses is projected to grow by a whopping 6% from the year 2022 to the year 2032. And this is faster than the average for all occupations. Not teachers, not plumbers, not doctors, not electricians. It's just nurses. And this means that there is about 200,000 job openings for registered nurses. And that's the projection each year on average over the next 10 years. Guys, so what this means is that there's going to be a robust demand for both locally educated nurses and also internationally educated nurses like myself who wish to migrate to countries like the US, the UK, and Australia. And in recent times, the interest by nurses in migrating to Australia is at an all-time high. I had a US nurse approach me with an interest to working in Australia, and that's interesting. But just a cautionary tale though, guys, the NCLEX is going to be the toughest exams you will ever take as a nurse. And I'm not even exaggerating. You need to experience it to know what I'm talking about. And that said, let's get to fun fact number 2. So South Dakota, Iowa, Alabama, and Mississippi are the lowest paying states for registered nurses here in the US. Okay, while states like California, Texas, Washington, and Hawaii are among the highest paying states for nurses here in the US. And interestingly though, some of the highest paying states are also the worst states for nurses to work. I mean, example, Hawaii pays nurses a lot, but with nearly a 70% tax and mortgage deduction when you combine both. I mean, nurses are left with just a paltry sum as take-home salary after every pay period. And nurses who work in Hawaii may never be able to afford a home if they are just to focus on one stream of income. So if you're a nurse in Hawaii, then you need to brace yourself for the need to pick up extra shifts or have 2 jobs and work back to back so that you can just have a standard home that a nurse in, say, South Dakota or Georgia will be able to afford. And that's one of the downsides of living in a high-paying but expensive state here in the US. Now, here is the third fun fact. Now, nearly 30% of internationally educated nurses in the US are Filipino, and they are dotted across the length and breadth of the country, and they have been an indispensable support in US nursing. But you may be surprised by this, right? Here is what you need to know. You see, the Philippines is a former US colony, just like India was a former British colony. So when you go to the UK, there are so many Indian nurses there. So the US set up the very early nursing schools in the Philippines and offered Americanized nursing training to produce nurses to augment the dwindling nursing numbers in the US, as most nurses in the US were quitting their jobs in the droves after the World War II. I mean, during World War II, there was a support program for nurses in the US, and so they were paid well. But after World War II, the funding was taken out, and so a lot of nurses started to quit. Now, the US government at the time found training Filipino nurses and bringing them to the US as a better option than increasing the salary of nurses. Now, a few years later, after the Filipino economy began to crash economically, most Filipino nurses started turning to America in search of greener pastures. And the Filipino government was also promoting actively the exodus of nurses to the US for greener pastures because it was bringing a lot of foreign direct investment. I mean, the same trend is going on in Africa currently, but that's a discussion for another day. This video is just about a fun fact, and so let's stick to that. And here is fun fact number 4. Now, diversity in nursing is improving, with the number of males in nursing increasing from 2.5 in 1970 to 12% in 2023. And this is according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. I mean, for men who are choosing nursing as a second career in their 50s to those whose first ever career is nursing. And I'm not even sure why they call it male nurses when there is no female doctor or female engineer or female lawyer. Maybe there's a whole conspiracy about male nurses, but I think a nurse is a nurse and male nurses are dope. Period. And now here's fact number 5. Home health care has seen the largest demand increase, and that indicates the critical role nurses play in the communities. And the reason is simple. It costs the US government much less to send nurses and carers to the home of patients instead of keeping them in the hospital. You are spending nearly $3,000 per day in a hospital as compared to much lower when a carer or a nurse is sent to the home. And this is a trend that has been on in the UK and is really catching up really quickly here in the US. Now, the good thing about this for nurses is that nurses who choose to run a home healthcare company, business is booming. And today when you go on Twitter or TikTok or YouTube, there are several nurses who are running home healthcare businesses and are killing the bag. A few weeks ago, I watched a TEDx talk where a guy was speaking about his home health business and how it is booming and how he keeps getting loads of referrals, literally swamped with requests for him to manage patients because hospitals are just getting full and it's really expensive to spend nights in hospitals. So most insurance companies will prefer you being cared for by a home health company in your home just so that the cost will be reduced. And here is fun fact number 6. I mean, here in the US, nurses are not just health providers, but they are also leaders, they are educators, I mean, they are business magnates, and nurses are killing it from the wardroom to the boardroom. Nurses continue to lead and leave footprints. Oh yeah, I mean, talk about the ultra rich nurses in America. There is one gentleman called Leslie Awasom who is a CRNA but owns a $168 million real estate portfolio, and he co-owns a clinic called the Vita Nova Wellness Clinic in Maryland. There's also Chrislyn Tuttle, who is one of the most popular nurses here in the US. She's a registered nurse and she's the founder of Nurse in the Making, which is worth over $11 million, selling nursing school study guides and NCLEX prep materials with a company called Nurse in the Making. And most people who have taken the NCLEX might have heard of Nurse in the Making, or nurses who work at the bedside like Eric, who is reported to making $600,000 a year working as an ER nurse at Tesla. So in the US, nurses are crashing it. Now this brings us to fun fact number 7. Nursing education is most expensive in the US when you compare it to its top tiers like the UK, Canada and Australia. I mean, continuing education for specializations is even more expensive, with nursing paying in excess of $200,000 for a DMP or a Doctor of Nursing program. But here's the catch. After the course, their starting salary is about $140,000 per annum. So somebody will argue that it's probably well worth it, and a subscription to the channel will be worth a thank you. And this brings us to the next fun fact, which is fun fact number 8. Importance of continuing education is at an all-time high, okay, and this has made nurses stay at the cutting edge of medical protocols and treatment here in the US. And the thing about nursing in the US is that protocols are everything, okay? So there is the urinary retention protocol, there's the hypoglycemia protocol, there's the electrolyte protocol. I'm even sure there's a protocol for things I can't mention in this video, but I know you get the drift. You better know your protocols, guys, else you are up. Here's fun fact number 9, which is the last but one. You'll be surprised to know that a significant 25% of nurses in the US work part-time. So some nurses in the US work 28 hours, others do 20 hours, and some even do a paltry 12-hour shift, and that's one shift a week, and are entitled to staff benefits. Now what this gives nurses in the US is some really good work-life balance, and you're able to dictate your terms of work, whether you want to work more than 36 hours or you want to work 12 hours. The ball is just in your court, and that is some really flexible shit. Sorry, I meant to say shift. Now here is the last but one fun fact. According to a research by AMN Healthcare, which is this huge health staffing company here in the US, 1 in 3 US nurses plan to quit the nursing profession by the end of the year. But what's a more interesting fact is that this was a similar statistic in the year 1950, in 1960, in 1970, in 2000, and today, just maybe, the Gen Z nurses are going to be those who will actually walk the talk. And in all honesty, maybe COVID has broken the camel's back. Now here's the last fact and the most interesting fact. I'm taking a donation in the form of subscribe for the next video. Remember to subscribe. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video.